So when most fans think about superheroes and superhero universes, they tend to think of it all being kind of the same thing. One big monolithic beast filled with costumes and origins and powers. They don't really realize that there's a big difference actually between the DC universe and other fictional superhero universes. So what makes DC different? There are four key elements. One, we have iconic characters that stand for ideals. So the prime example of that would be Superman. He stands for truth and justice. We have sidekicks. So when you look at our universe, we have Robin to a Batman. We have Kid Flash to Flash. Wonder Girl to Wonder Woman. Third, we have fictional cities. The most popular or well-known ones are like Gotham City and Metropolis. But there's Hub City, Star City, Central City, Keystone City. The list goes on and on. But what makes DC the most different, in my mind, from other fictional superhero universes is the DC multiverse. We all know that no more than one object can occupy space in one moment of time. So when you think about Earth, you have Earth sitting here rotating in space. But what if there were other multiple Earths, all inhabiting the same space? Impossible, you say? Well, what if each Earth was vibrating at a slightly different frequency, which allowed all the molecules of reality to basically sit on top of one another, unbeknownst to each other, sitting in the same space? So when you start pulling them apart, you start realizing that there's not just one Earth, but that there are infinite Earths. But how did the multiverse come to be? To learn its true origins, we need to go all the way back to the very start of the DC universe, to the beginning of the Golden Age. During the Golden Age, we introduced Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. Most people know those characters, of course, but they don't know that we also published characters like the Flash and Green Lantern. And when you look at these characters, Jay Garrick and Alan Scott, they don't look anything like their modern incarnations, and that's because they're completely different characters. So cut to 1956, and sales are starting to wane though on characters like the Flash and Green Lanterns. Eventually what they did with the Flash and the Green Lantern was to essentially reboot them. And in rebooting them, they basically took the same names, but they gave the characters new aliases, new secret identities, and so now the Flash was no longer Jay Garrick. It was a new character called Barry Allen. And Barry Allen was a blonde man who was always late to everything, even though he was the fastest man alive. And he worked at the local police station as a forensic scientist. And Green Lantern got a new alias as well. He was no longer Alan Scott. He was now a new character called Hal Jordan. And Hal Jordan was a wild, reckless test pilot. And he got his ring from the Green Lantern Corps, a bunch of aliens that basically came to Earth. And they updated these origins to better reflect the interests of the audiences at the time. So cut to 1961. Sales on the new Flash and the new Green Lantern titles are doing great. But the fans still love the Golden Age incarnations of the Flash and Green Lantern. They still pined for Jay Garrick and Alan Scott. So they wanted those characters to come back. And so the powers that be at DC came up with a very creative and innovative way to have their cake and eat it too. In a story called Flash of Two Worlds, set in Flash issue 123, in the storyline, Barry Allen meets Jay Garrick, and they team up to take down a villain called the Fiddler. In this watershed issue, Barry Allen realizes that by vibrating his molecules to a different frequency, he could move from one reality, one Earth, to another. And in doing so, he meets the original Flash, Jay Garrick, who was on a different Earth. And in that moment, the multiverse is created. So what's really cool about this is that in the Flash TV show on the CW, they actually had Grant Gustin, who plays Barry Allen, meet Jay Garrick, who was played by John Wesley Shipp. The cool thing about this is that John Wesley Shipp, all of us longtime DC fans know, played the Flash on the CBS TV show from the 90s. But what really blew apart the internet was when Grant Gustin, who plays Barry Allen, meets Ezra Miller, who also plays Barry Allen, but from the films. Again, it paid off this notion that A, the Flashes are super critical to the DC mythology, and they are the characters from their respective Earths that are able to traverse the multiverse and meet up with one another. So the net result of the creation of the multiverse was the creation of two Earths. On Earth 1, which was the modern day Earth, you have Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, but you have the new incarnations of the Flash and Green Lantern, and a host of other new modern characters. They then took the legacy characters, like Jay Garrick and Alan Scott, and put them on Earth 2. Superman's older. If you look at his temple, he's got white hair. And they put a lot of other legacy characters that were created in the 1940s. Needless to say, Flash of Two Worlds was a big hit with the fan base. They wanted more. And so very soon after that, we started seeing more team-ups where the characters from Earth 1 started meeting the characters from Earth 2. And these meetings were called Crisis on Earth 1, Crisis on Earth 2, Crisis on Earth 3. In fact, every major epic event that DC has published usually has the word crisis in it somewhere. Crisis on Infinite Earths, Identity Crisis, Heroes in Crisis, Final Crisis. And then it spawned Crisis on Earth 3. And Earth 3 to me, as a 12-year-old reader reading it, it just blew my mind. Instead of Columbus being a European who discovers America in 1492, he's actually an American who discovers Europe. And on Earth 3, it's Abraham Lincoln, who's an assassin who kills the president, John Wilkes Booth. What was really twisted on Earth 3 was that there was no Justice League. There was just the crime syndicate of America. In fact, every superhero on Earth 3 is a villain. Instead of the Flash, you have Johnny Quick. Instead of Superman, you have Ultraman. Instead of Wonder Woman, you have Superwoman. But they're all bad. In fact, the only hero on Earth 3 is a human named Alexander Luthor. That's right. Lex Luthor on Earth 3 is the only hero. So over the decades, we've done virtually everything you could possibly imagine with the multiverse. We've condensed the infinite Earths down into one Earth. We've tried to kill the multiverse. And it was writer Grant Morrison who posited that the multiverse had been around for so long and had become so complicated that it in fact had gained sentience. And with this sentience, it had willed itself to be alive. And so what we love about this map of the multiverse, which was created by the designer Ryan Hughes, is it kind of lays out this idea that there are Earths that sit around a reality and that there are other big cosmic influences that govern how the multiverse operates. And the really cool thing about it is that it means that every story told is authentic and real and has happened. It allows our fans to embrace every version, every adaptation of our characters in media as being part of the DC mythology, as being part of canon. And I want to call out a couple that I thought were really meaningful to me. Obviously, Earth 3, which had a huge impact on me as a 12-year-old reader. And on Earth 23, we have a black Superman. It's not Clark Kent. It's actually a character called Calvin Ellis. And on this Earth, Calvin Ellis is Earth 23's Superman, who also happens to be the President of the United States. Another really fun and quirky Earth is Earth 26. And on Earth 26, all the heroes are represented by furry creatures. They're cartoon representations of themselves. So instead of Superman, you have a character like Captain Carrot. And instead of the Justice League, you have the Zoo Crew. So that's the DC Multiverse 101. As you can see, there is a lot to digest here. But just understand, first, that we are not alone. There are alternate realities, and on these alternate realities, we are more or less represented, but in slightly different ways. 2, the heroes that are vital to the multiverse are characters like the Flash that can tap into the Speed Force and vibrate their molecules and traverse from one Earth to another. 3, the most significant unlock that you get out of the multiverse, I think, is that it allows all of fandom to embrace every different adaptation or incarnation of our characters across all of media, publishing, TV shows, games, movies, as being the one true version of these characters. They are all legitimate. They are all authentic. They are all part of canon. They are all part of the DC multiverse.